Welcome to this shortwave radio channel, and this is another video in our series Megahertz by Megahertz, where we take a look at what's in the shortwave spectrum every megahertz at a time. So we are going to look in this video from 4 to 5 megahertz. What's in that range? Nice range with lots of things to listen to, mostly nighttime, but you'd be surprised at signals coming in even sometimes in the daytime if they're close to you, in the winter time also. So what's in that range? Well, the first little chunk at the beginning of this range is a utility band. So there's all sorts of utility signals. For example, those that listen regularly notice this 4004 kilohertz RTTY that's there pretty much logged 24 hours a day here. And I believe it comes from somewhere in the United States. And there's a station it's not a broadcast band, but there's a frequency where I hear a station from time to time with a good signal. 4055 Radio Verdad. It's there because you see the trace, but almost impossible to actually listen to. When you start moving away from here up to almost 4500 kilohertz, this is a maritime band. Everything maritime communications is in here. There's a lot of stuff. There's things like signals from, for example, here the famous, I think this is from Boston, which is weather fax transmissions from Boston on 4317. There's voice communications, maritime of all sorts. It's mixed in with all sorts of things. Sometimes I hear Mars or military auxiliary radio system communications from the U.S. Air Force. But most of it there is maritime stuff in general. You will have, CW beacons or channel markers if you want. You will have voice transmissions of maritime weather. One notable signal that I hear often, that is 4426. Coming out of Chesapeake, Virginia. And so it's an interesting part to listen to. With low solar activity also, the bottom part, the first 100 kilohertz roughly, 100, 150 kilohertz, there are a lot of pirates that have decided to use that range because the higher frequencies don't propagate as well. So take a listen. Sometimes you might actually stumble upon a pirate on the bottom part of 4 megahertz also. I've heard quite a few pirates use that frequency range. And, of course, lots of communications of all sorts in maritime weather stations. Here's another weather fax frequency with the range. Then as you move up past 450, 4500, you come back to what is technically utility stations of all sorts. Now, one signal to note, because a lot of you can probably hear that and wonder what it is, and I'm going to actually have you guys listen in, and you probably have seen the trace that it does actually on my SDR, and it's the CODAR. So around 4500 kilohertz, there is what is some CODAR. It sounds like little chirps. We'll actually go right in one of the bands. So here it is. So what that is CODAR. CODAR is a type of ocean surface radar. So basically with these little chirps and stations scattered all across the coast, they can actually monitor ocean waves and see the height of the waves and all of that. So this is what you hear in that range, and there are quite a few scattered around. And they are pretty wide band, as you see here, and they're creating these little lines that you see on the display here. Back up around 4600 and up to 47, there's more maritime stuff in there, including one that I hear from time to time is 4610 GYA station sending weather fax from the UK, Northwoods Radio. Then as you go above 4700, you fall into what is it's first of all utilities. can use almost any portion over there, but it is also known as the 60-meter tropical band. And there are quite a lot of stations actually that use that range, including stations from that are from India and South America and Africa. And there's actually a lot of stations that do use that band. For example, here one is 4765, which is Radio Progreso out of Cuba on this range. You will hear very often there's WWCR, which is a powerhouse here on 4840. And you might say, well, isn't that a tropical band? Well, there's a maximum of latitude or up and down, below or above the equator, that these stations can broadcast, and I believe WWCR falls in that range. Of course, there's radio. Another station here is 4875, which is Brazil. 4885, another one from Brazil also, that I hear quite often. Around 4930, 4960, I often hear Voice of America broadcasting from one of its relays in Africa. And so it is, there's a lot of stuff in there depending on the time, mostly nighttime, but listen around the clock, you never know what could happen. And finally, we round up at the top of the band as we go to 5 megahertz, which is the time signal frequency for WWV, WWVH, and maybe some other scattered around the world also use it. And here we can listen to WWV for a few seconds. So lots of stuff in there. A lot of maritime mobile stuff, maritime stations, weather stations on the bottom part. There's also a little bit of aeronautical stuff around 4600, 4650, 4670. You might hear some aeronautical communications. There's a small chunk there for aeronautical stuff. So listen, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of it in upper sideband, but also some nice tropical band broadcasts that often can show up. And this is an interesting, weird thing that I've never heard over here. So listen to that. You might be surprised at what you can hear, and there's always some interesting stuff in this band that of all sorts. I mean, it could really, really be. So here, for example, what you just heard was aeronautical communications 4675. So that's some of the aeronautical communications you might hear of air traffic control also. So tune around and check that band regularly. There's a lot of stuff, and it is a very interesting range to tune around. As you see here, just tuning around, there are some stuff that pop up here and there, and it's always kind of exciting to tune around this range. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, give us thumbs up, and thank you for watching this series.